This is greytFM.
Hello, folks. Welcome to greytFM, the official podcast series from greytHR. It's been a long year and simultaneously one that whizzed past us with no warning. And maybe time seemed to fly because we were all busy trying new things and putting out fires at the same time. The nature of work has changed drastically, a thought that we've been overexposed to at this point. I will run the risk of saying that. But it's one that impacts everything in the workspace and therefore HR teams world over. And what do we discuss on greytFM? Well, matters of HR. I'm going to quickly run you through a mind map actually before diving into today's conversation to set the context, right? What makes up the fabric of an organization? The people. Success and failure directly linked to the quality of the talent pool an organization has managed to curate. On the other hand, are people viewing work the same way? No. I mean, you've got moonlighting, you've got the gig economy and all that jazz. Now, couple these two things, and what do you have? Serious concerns and contemplation about talent acquisition and retention, more importantly. Companies now have to work doubly, triply hard at attracting and, more importantly, retaining a quality talent that can further the growth and vision of an organization and also create a sustainable workforce, right? And the efforts in this area are really, really visible. For example, I read a statistic recently cited in a WTW salary budget planning report that said in the largest increase since 2020, companies in the APAC region are budgeting an overall median salary increase of 5.1% for 2023 across 14 markets compared with the actual 4.9% increase in 2022. So just to put that in context, when you're talking about so many different regions coming together and doing that, that's quite an increase, okay? So as we move into 2023, this definitely is an important conversation to have, also to understand what are the things that we can do differently to be successful at talent acquisition and retention. So let's have this conversation with Vikas Maheshwary, Head Global HR Transformation, Biocon Biologics, and HR expert with over 25 years of experience in human capital management. Hello, how are you doing, Vikas?
Hey, I'm doing well. Ciao the world, and thanks for having me, Halya.
Lovely to have you here, Vikas. I hear that, the podcast is also coming to you at a good time because you're having quite a day, huh?
Yeah, so Thursdays are usually like that, isn't it? Because you're just kind of in the middle and have so much to wrap up before the weekend arrives.
All right. Well, I hope this conversation gets you all, fired up again. I think it's a feeling that has been felt amongst not just HR professionals, but people in any kind of work landscape, right? This idea of staying at your company versus leaving, and lingo that recently caught my eye specifically with regards to this conversation is the talent war. Can you break this down for us? Because I think it provides a good foundation. What does the talent war mean and what does it actually indicate to you?
I think let me start with a few quick reflections, and then get down to, the lingo that you just spoke about. Mm-hmm. So I think 2022 could be summarized as the year when HR took a leap of faith, into the land of unknown. While in 2021, I think we were talking how pandemic forced us to go virtual and we struggled with handling Zoom fatigue, work from home related challenges. And this year, I don't know whether you've heard this, but this year we've also started talking of metaverse for effective PWD inclusion. You could see the kind of, drift that we've had literally, and we are all running literally on, I would say, steroids, if I may use that expression, because that's the kind of pace that we've been at. I also feel that this has been an exceptionally good year for marketeers, okay? So in a way, this has been a good year for HR practitioners because all of this buzz has forced us to think a tad bit differently and challenge everything that we do. Now, talking of lingos, I feel even war for talent, okay? This was actually coined by McKinsey, if my memory serves me right, somewhere in 97. And it described, the difficulties that businesses face in finding or hiring skilled workers. I think in the current context, especially post-COVID, war for talent also has a retention focus. And I go back to what you said that, this year is actually where people are, or recruiters are starting to think that, is recruiting really my key focus, or do I start from attrition management or retention? So that's the kind of shift that you're seeing in this whole war for talent business. In other words, having an employee as just another brick in the wall, those days are gone. Okay. So they have to be looked as an important contributor to the value stream, not that they were not valued, but just as this whole feeling has just amplified. And that really is at the heart of retaining an employee, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, I think the year has brought with it some very, very important realizations, like you just pointed out. And more specifically, this period in time, 2022 is sort of the fallout year from the pandemic, right? And I remember having this conversation with when it came to the Great Resignation as well, previously in our podcast series. And we were talking about the idea that the pandemic sort of exacerbated the situation versus did it cause the situation, right? And I think that's a fairly okay question to ask or ponder on when it comes to talent retention as well. Do you think that this was a long time coming? And as an aside to that, what are the reasons for this problem that many organizations are currently, dealing with?
Yeah, a bit of both, right? I mean, if you look at just pre-COVID times, we had been throwing people at problems. Let's not deny that. Hiring was a number. Okay. Manning was a key metric that used to be the hero of all the stories. Today, post-COVID, we are forced to think Manning in correlation to outcome. Also about the impact that Manning has made. I mean, look around you and you would find that there is a huge skill gap which is being caused by rapid changes in the job environment. Ever since we've started establishing skills COE in organization, the skill center of excellence, we've started asking for skills which were never spoken or heard of earlier. And I think of challenges from gig economy, which is yet another contributor to the war of talent. And if you ask me, that's also been the reason why the revival of moonlighting happened. Then the way the businesses operate has seen major disruptions. This is almost like a cliched statement that everybody makes, but example would be, you used to be in a B2B setup, then you said, okay, there's a B2B and a B2C. Today, they are also talking about a B2B2C, so the lines or the business models in itself have emerged. And most importantly, the changing needs and expectations of workers, if you ask me, because we're talking multiple generations at workplace today. The rise of millennials, the advent of Gen Z, the upcoming alphas. So given these challenges, it's not surprising that for many businesses, employee and attrition, are front burner issues. So most HR practitioners, therefore, if you ask me, have got to or are already doing a reconfiguration of their people strategies to literally work on building resilience within org structures, processes, and then people resilience as well. And using tech, to empower, enable, and change behaviors. I think it's not just the pandemic, it's also, this was definitely coming. It's just the way we have evolved, and that's what is at the heart of it all.
Nice. Okay, I like the conversation about tech and how that impacts behavior, and how that also leads to HR professionals having to, like you said, reconfigure, right? And that was going to be my next line of conversation, which is: do you think HR as a function, not just HR professionals individually, but as a function, there needs to be a change in the approach to talent attraction and retention? Is 2023, given that we're talking about trends next year, is 2023 going to see a different way of building a talent pool, in the sense that, does it have to see a different way of building that pool?
Yeah, we're always on that path, right? So, but let me just say that HR is having a watershed moment right now, where we are being forced to throw away the traditional HR playbook fired by the pandemic, the acceleration of intelligent automation, the great reshuffle. HR, I think, therefore, has to get creative when hiring, while also finding innovative ways to retain the existing employees. To be honest, I also feel that the rubber meets the road when talent acquisition teams think retention before acquisition, as I said earlier. So let me leave you with a food for thought here, and something which I think will catch everyone's fancy sooner than later, is that possibly the lines between talent acquisition and talent management are getting blurred. You are going to be looking at a unified talent strategy going forward, which starts from retention and culminates in a belief that employment, brand advocacy, and subsequently hiring would happen organically with minimal pain. So simply put, what I'm saying is that we as HR should focus on the people we already have in our organizations. Put more emphasis on training employees, developing skills in-house, and drive internal mobility before we start buying talent. So in the war for talent, companies can thrive by investing in developing the talent they already have. So HR stands to significantly benefit, if we focus on the following. Building advocacy, which is the brand advocacy and subsequently the product advocacy as well, by focusing on flexibility and then by emphasizing work-life balance and well-being. The second is that creating personalized experiences. Gone are those days when you could do a one-size-fits-all. For HR to truly deliver on employee experience, I believe it needs to decentralize a number of aspects, from development, career pathing, flexi pay structures, or whatever else. But this has to be decentralized. You have to work towards building hyper personalized HR journeys. And then, of course, one other thing that needs to be looked at is how do you attract and retain older workers? So many mature people either want to continue working or they have to do so for whatever family reasons, etc. Unfortunately, many of them get overlooked, for training and development opportunities because of a misplaced view. Well, they're stuck in their ways. They're also amongst the first to be laid off every time there is a, restructuring or reorganization kind of And often, you would force them into early retirement, etc. So we have to look at them. So at the same time, the workforce is also aging rapidly in these organizations. So you really have no choice but to embrace them. I'll tell you could do some research on this practice by Unilever. It's called U-Work, where they use a lot of these 50 plus, kind of workforce to do interventions with the junior lords.
I think the entire idea of like a mentoring, and also, so mentoring and learning and development, like you said, is something again that we've talked about in a lot of detail about the pros of paying attention and investing in learning and development and how it can actually help you create a sustainable, healthy organization that doesn't have to keep going through like, the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride of the fallout of another pandemic. Yeah, absolutely. And I do kind of want to ask a question now, Vikas. At the end of the day, we all work for one thing, right? Passions and everything aside, we do work for money. Do you think that monetary benefits are the only way to attract one, or, do we need to start thinking outside the box? Like you mentioned, flexibility. Do you think other priorities need to become much bigger players, and that'll probably help?
Well, the answer is yes and no. Okay. If you were to think that any generation, be it the millennials or the boomers or even the Gen Zs, if you were to say that, okay, you know what, I have trophy perks for you. So I have coffee machines and I have bean bags, but I have a low salary package. We all know the answer, whether they're going to pick it up or not. Yeah. So I think it's a fine balance. Okay. But what works for almost everybody, in my view, is a tad bit different. It is to say, okay, you have to meet a certain baseline of a compensation. Money is important, but not the only thing. Even if you look at the Gen Zs, people were saying, we're happy to kind of give up some part of our salary, provided, we are given a work from home option. You ask any HR professional that have they encountered these cases yet? I mean, they're all there in this service, but in your organizations, you don't find those folks. Money is definitely important. But what people possibly need to focus on, people like us, is that how do you make them productive and give them the control to earn the money? So what I'm trying to say is that productivity is the key here. Now, if I can create an HR ecosystem which helps an employee be productive and therefore grow, and this growth could be in scope, span, money, everything, but the company should not have a problem if somebody is delivering and over-delivering on results. You should be having a solid reward structure to give the person back the share of profits or the share of contribution. And that's when people are really, really happy. So what they're looking at, okay, an entry point is the money, but then how do you retain them? How do you sustain them? Right. Is by making them part of that entire ecosystem where they grow along with the organization. HR has to work in hand with businesses to unlock productivity is what I'm saying for the employee, No,
I think that's such an interesting way to look at it, which is that, money may attract, but it's all the other factors that will retain at the end of the day. Because I think personally, if we just boil this down to personal experiences, we've all seen people who work for a lot of money and suddenly say, I don't want to stay here anymore because I'm not feeling good and I need a different environment, right? So I also want to taper down the conversation now to be a little bit more micro, Vikas. I want to actually examine some of the things that maybe you see as emerging trends in the area of recruitment and retention in the year coming ahead.
Improving the workforce planning. Okay, that's going to be at the heart of it all. Workforce planning has to better inform, the buy, build, borrow strategies and also drive internal mobility. And that's something that has pretty much been carried out on Excels with a very linear kind of a data. So that is going to see a change, and that's an emerging trend. I also see that, intelligent automation is going to be a big one, because already there's a lot of solutions out there which people are using to kind of fine tune their automation and simplify, repetitive tasks, reducing admin work. All of this has already been around, but it's only going to increase going forward. Even things like analytics. So, I've been saying this in the organization that I work with as well, that gone are those days when you would sit on diagnostics and then say, oh, well, this happened, now let's repair it. I think you have to go a little more proactive. And therefore, the whole case for predictive analytics is being built, even in hiring, because today you have data models available and they kind of predict the quality of performance for a new hire. The third emerging trend, and I'm sure you've spoken about this to the other subject matter experts as well, is on the whole diversity and inclusion business. Now, I'll tell you why this is relevant for recruitment as well, because you see, let's accept that business leaders today have woken up to the fact that, DI is important. They accept that a culturally diverse workforce definitely fuels innovation, creativity, higher profitability. So that realization is there. However, when it comes to recruitment metrics, you will see that, only 1 in 3 recruiters pretty much track the diversity of candidates. And then, of course, the Gen Z, which enters the workforce. So you will have to look at how do you cater to their needs? The major drift that you would see in recruitment processes is speed, because the Gen Z, or let's say even a millennial who's in a Z's body, like myself, let's say, they will expect everything to be virtual and fast-paced. Yeah. So outdated recruitment methods will be a major, major turnoff for them. Even 3-page of job descriptions which say the person used needs to be so and so, they are a major turnoff. They would like the JD also to be a first person, short and crisp, almost like a sales pitch. Okay. So I think recruitment will have to also gear up accordingly, be available in the social media. So those are some important trends that you would see. And the most important, something that just hit me, and I have to say this to you, is that transformation of recruiters is going to happen. They're going to become more like business leaders. So stay with me on this one when I make this point. So if you look at recruiters around you, okay, you will see that they are pretty much like an order taker. Okay. But I think they will now move on to become HR business partners. So in the coming time, I think recruitment is going to be looked at as a strategic role. Not that it's not looked at already, but it's still an order-taking kind of a philosophy. So this would change. So these, I think, are pretty much the emerging trends. Other than, of course, there's lots happening on the tech. There's O&A coming and all of that fancy stuff. But at the core, I think these are some of the key ones that we need to be ready for.
Nice. Okay. I think that's a very comprehensive list, first of all. You said I can't pinpoint, but you picked out some of the really cool ones. And I think in that vein, next year, if you were to sit and judge, what do you think will be the differentiator, and not differentiators, but one differentiator that will make an HR team either successful or a faltering one when it comes to winning the bid for quality and loyal talent?
Oh, you didn't just say the L word, did you?
The L word.
Okay. So I'm not sure if loyalty is paramount or quality. Okay. So let me just say this the other way around. Would you value productivity or presentism? Okay. So my belief is that don't work towards building a loyal workforce. Okay. Work towards building a productive, happy workforce. Loyalty will follow. So the differentiators would be built if you were able to answer the following questions. So one is that, do you have a culture of innovation in your organization? And that so-called belief that you have a culture of innovation, is it decentralized or is it still, somebody has to approve an idea? And then they don't have the right support system or the right fuel to run that innovation forward. So in the absence of things like Shark Tanks or an innovation framework or an innovation lab or innovation champions, this is going to fail. So the question to ask is, you will build only a culture of innovation if you really, kind of decentralize all of it. The next question is, be present where your people are. Whether you're hiring through Instagram, Coffee Mug, or any other similar platform, what are you doing there yourself? If you're not there, then you can't really create a differentiation for yourself. And then, are you using AI, which is artificial intelligence, to identify key drivers for attracting EVP? Again, I'm saying that, there are methodologies available today to identify that what is it that a certain kind of a generation, not all, but a certain kind of a generation looking forward to an EVP. It's no more like, a top-down approach where the CEO wishes to have a desired culture and basis that you drive an EVP. I think those days are also gone behind. So you have to use a lot of tech to identify what's out there and what people want. Do you have an intelligence layer, a talent intelligence layer built in? Then also, do you have a one-size-fits-all reward structure, or do you have a personalized persona-based reward structure or a skill-based reward structure? If you solve for some of these questions, then I'm pretty sure we would be building a competitive advantage. And then just one more thing, okay, which may not be a direct answer to that question, but if you really want to fetch the right quality, which typically is the custodians for this, the recruiters, then the HR also has to think a little differently. So HR has to think like tech and marketing. You have to think like a marketeer. You have to think technology. These things come together. If you do not have a product thinking mindset, you possibly will not be able to, kind of evolve and get into the right places to hire the right talent. So this is my view on how you could build a differentiation, Halia.
Lovely. Well, I think again you've given us some really valuable insights into how we can sort of structure our approach to this. And I think I want to wrap today's conversation, Vikas, with just one question. It's a bit personal. What is the most important trend that you're going to be keeping an eye on, and also probably using in the next year as an HR professional yourself?
One you said, no, another, you made my life difficult. So,
just one. Just one.
Say that there's one trend that we need to look out, and we as an organization, plus I know a lot of my other colleagues are also working on, is establishing the skills COE. Okay, so it identifies for a certain role, which are the emerging, declining, adjacent skills. Okay. Now, once you get this information, then your entire talent journeys are impacted, because you see your hiring, let's start from there. Your hiring becomes more meaningful because you are now looking at those emerging and also the adjacent skills. Mostly recruiters, they do a keyword search, they find that this particular skill is not available and they reject the CV. But if you know that for that particular skill, which are the adjacent ones, you would not be, rejecting that CV. You would actually put that in the funnel. But then if you move further, after you've done a skill gap analysis, you could also have more meaningful conversations around promotions and growth for an employee. We all know it. Most of these talent conversations that happen, they are based on that one talent profile which is created, where the hero of the story again is the tenure that the person has spent in the organization, and possibly the ratings, the performance ratings, and that's pretty much it. Okay, and then you have education and all of that, but nowhere can you answer from that talent profile that is this person ready for the role that you're promoting the person for, which could be an aspired role or just a vertical movement. A lot of that is an intuition or is a gut feel from somebody or manager, to say that, well, I think this person is ready. But if you have a skills scorecard with you for the current and also for the aspired role or for the next role, then the conversation is way more meaningful, because you know that you're going to take a decision on this employee's growth in the organization, setting this person up for success and definitely not for failure if you've established that skills COE. So I think that's one emerging trend that if you could just invest on, you would not go wrong as an HR practitioner for the next 4 to 5 years for sure.
Yeah, but it definitely seems worth it, like you pointed out, and a good last pick, I think, Vikas. We've ended on a high. Thank you so very much for joining us on this podcast for this conversation. It's really been quite valuable to understand, and a great one to have going into the new year. I think we can all take a lot from it. So thanks once again.
Thanks, Ahalya. I've thoroughly enjoyed this and look forward to more. Thank you so much for having me once again.
Absolutely. Everyone stay tuned. More interesting podcasts coming up on the Great FM series. As you always know, we will deliver the next time we meet you. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay happy, and stay curious.
This is Great FM.